The congressman from the 3rd District, Michael Guest. Good morning, sir. Live from Washington, D.C. on a hopefully not historic moment because the vote is going to be. Tell me a little bit about what's going on there and when is the vote possibly going to happen?
Good morning, Paul, and thank you for having me on today. Before we get started, I love those comments from Carville. He sounded almost like a conservative talking about what the progressives have done to the Democratic Party, and we know that our nation is a center-right nation, but with the progressives, whether it be Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, and the squad, they've pulled us further and further left, and unfortunately, right now we are scheduled to have votes today, particularly the one that should be disturbing to everyone is the budget reconciliation plan, which has continued to develop all the way through last night. It is a major expansion of government. It is a major spending bill. The cost is projected to be somewhere between $1.75 trillion and $2 trillion. We still don't know the cost because the Democrats won't allow the Congressional Budget Office to actually score the legislation. You know, the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan group, and so when legislation is generally proposed, that legislation is sent to this nonpartisan group, and then they return back and they score the legislation, and they actually tell us how much it costs to implement that. But because of what happened in Virginia on Tuesday, because of the narrow victory we saw in New Jersey, other defeats for progressive in cities across the country last Tuesday, it has now created a sense of urgency to many in the Democrat Party, particularly the progressives, to move things as quickly as they can, because I believe that they feel that they have lost the support of the American people and that they will lose their majority in the Congress this time next year.
Well, let me ask you this. And we played Tom Cotton issuing a warning to some of the members on the Democrat side over in the Senate. But you think some of them maybe are now changing their mind as far as the Democrats? Are they still all on board? And this is still going to just be nothing more than a straight party line vote?
You know, I think today in the House that this will be a straight party line vote. I think that there are some moderates who may have some concerns. But I don't believe that Pelosi will bring this bill to the floor unless she has assurance from her moderate members that they will support this. We have an equally divided Senate 50-50, and in the House there's currently one vacancy. So right now the Democrats only have a 3-vote majority, and so that is why it is very difficult to get major legislation passed, particularly major transformative legislation like we see here. And there has been no engagement at all with the Republican Party. The legislation that we will be debating today, the legislation that may come to the floor for the vote, is a legislation that has been drafted among the Democratic caucus. They have excluded all Republicans, and I do not expect that there will be any Republican votes. I hope and I wish that there would be a handful of moderates who would vote against that and say, look, we're not going to do this. This is bad for the country, it's bad for our economy, and it's bad for the American public.
Is that bill, that's the one that's about 2,000 pages?
That's correct, and a bill that has constantly changed. If you followed it at all, Paul, that bill changes almost on a daily basis. You know, for a while, family leave was in, then it was out, then it was back in. Same thing with prescription drug pricing. That was in, then they pulled it out, and then they stuck it back in. You know, and you look at things like, you know, the family leave that they're proposing. It started off at 12 weeks. Then it was taken out, then put back in at 4. Was reading something last night that even someone who doesn't have a job, someone who is unemployed, could apply for family leave, and they could get 4 weeks of paid leave paid by the federal government when they're not currently working, and they could receive up to $1,000 a week. So the federal government is going to be inundated potentially with people who are unemployed, who are now trying to claim family leave, and the federal government is going to pay for that. And so that's why this congressional budget score is so important. We need to understand as a Congress what we're going to be committing the American people to in terms of dollars before we vote on this transformative piece of legislation.
By the way, the U.S. added 531,000 jobs in October as hiring rebounded amid labor shortages, 531,000. And the reason that happened is because we stopped giving away some of those subsidies and that extra check, so people had to go back to work, and much to the chagrin of a lot of people on the Democrat side. Michael, what worries me about this, and I heard a clip on it a couple of days ago, they constantly talk about this as an historic bill. It's a humanity-changing bill. And now they're saying it's about like LBJ's Great Society, which I would never have attached that name to, but this will transform the country. Instead of building back better, we're talking about building the Socialist Party for the most part.
You're right. It's a transformative bill in the fact that it expands government something like we've never seen in our lifetime. This one particular bill creates new government programs that once we know that those programs are created, they're very difficult, if not impossible, to ever do away with. It expands current existing programs, and it's going to ultimately cost the American public trillions of dollars. And it is what we have traditionally seen from the Democrats, tax and spend. They want to take money from the American people, take money out of our paycheck. They want to send that money to Washington and then them fund it.
I only have a little time here, so I want to be a little brief on this one. Do you have any idea what time the vote's going to be taken today?
I do not. We have already gavelled in. I had a vote this morning. There was a motion to adjourn that is currently being voted on now. I expected that motion to fail, so I do expect that we will continue to go forward, but we could have a very long day in Washington, D.C. today.
I do believe that our Attorney General has filed her lawsuit. I'm not sure exactly in unison with the other ones or what's happened as far as the vaccination mandate, which now has been moved to January. You want to speak to that and where we are? What's the status in Washington as far as the mandate's concerned?
Yeah, I think everyone saw this week, we finally saw that the Biden administration put out the rules as it relates to the vaccine mandate. That's something that we have been critical of from day one. While we encourage people to get the vaccine, that is a personal choice, and no one should be forced to choose between being vaccinated and having a job. We have signed off on several pieces of legislation in the House that would prohibit that. We have also signed off on letters to the administration, to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and other administrative officials stating our opposition to that. We've also reached out to the Attorney General to offer whatever support we can be, because we believe that this is wrong and this is inappropriate. We don't believe that people should, again, be forced to pick between one or the other. And I will tell you that this is one of the things that we have probably had more calls about than anything over the last several weeks. People are upset about that. People are upset with government interference, having the federal government interfere in every aspect of their life and telling them what they can and cannot do as far as having to require a vaccination, to whether it be to work, whether it be to travel, whether it be to eat in restaurants like we've seen in some liberal cities. It is clearly government overreach, and people are tired of it. And I think that that's why what you saw in Virginia and New Jersey, people are tired of the government interfering in their life. They want to be left alone.
Looking at your vote on the motion to adjourn, the total is 153 for, 133 against, 148 not voting. So that's the latest on that.
Yeah, members are still trickling in this morning. Yeah. So not everybody gets to work as early as we do at 8 a.m. So there's still members trickling in. So that vote probably will remain open for the next 30 to 45 minutes.
When we come back, I want to ask you about this Benny Thompson story that kind of broke yesterday and your thoughts on that one and a couple of other things from Congressman, Mississippi 3rd District, Michael Guest, our friends Joel, and also Natasha going to join us. They are in Virginia, so another aspect of what went on in the Virginia election that's rocked the Democrat Party. Back with that and more, and back with Michael Guest right after this. Short segment, let's get back with Congressman Michael Guest, live from the Trustmark studio. The story reads that Representative Congressman Benny Thompson, the only Democrat in Mississippi's delegation, has requested EPA investigate the agency's handling of the controversial flood control project in his state. The letter went to the Administrator Michael Regan. Thompson asked the agency to dig into EPA's decision issued during the Trump administration to reverse a past veto of the Yazoo Pumps project. I know this is just breaking, but do you have any insight on this at all, sir?
Very surprised by what you've talked about, Paul. Have seen the article in question that came out. I've had multiple conversations with Congressman Thompson, as have other members of the delegation. And this has really been one of the few issues that we have been unanimous in, is that we have to make sure that we are providing necessary relief to the Mississippi Delta. And we have seen over the years the flooding that has been caused by the Yazoo Backwater Flood Control District. And the problem has been the fact that there are no pumps. And so once that gate is closed, that water has nowhere to go. And it just sits there. And it impacts those local communities. It makes there's farmland, which is we're unable to use. And so as a delegation, we have unanimously pushed going forward and making sure that there are pumps that are installed there. And so to see now that Congressman Thompson has sent a letter asking the EPA to conduct an investigation and to review the process that we have worked so hard, it really seems counterproductive to his public position and the position that he's taken with other members of the delegation, that he wholeheartedly supports this project.
Well, he said, since I represent constituents on both sides of the issue, it is critical that science and law, not politics, drive infrastructure projects that impact my district. Thompson, who sought funding for the Yazoo project in the past, wrote further, it is my desire to see all the best scientific and legal means available applied to address flooding, reduce flood risk in my district. So I'm not sure if he's saying that something was falsified or something, or at least needs to be investigated. But it seems to me one way or the other, it's going to not speed up this. It's going to slow it down.
No doubt. Anytime you call for an investigation, that's going to slow things down. So this project, which was moving forward, I think now will quickly grind to a halt. I also saw in the article that he was saying that there was political pressure that had been applied by the Trump administration to get EPA to grant this approval. I don't know if Congressman Thompson has any evidence to that effect. But I am disappointed, because I agree with your assessment that now that these allegations have been made, that it is going to take much longer for us to be able to complete those pumps and provide that needed relief to the Mississippi Delta.
I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question, because I think the answer is I know the answer, but when you're canvassing the folks and you're back home and talking to the people, I would think, number one, the problem out there, the number one worry is going to be inflation, which all stems from gas prices. So what's going on with that? Is there any relief at all that you've heard from Washington, D.C.?
Unfortunately, Paul, there is no plan that this administration has to address inflation. I'm scared that some of the legislation that we may actually be voting on the House today could make inflation worse. When you're talking about spending that encompasses trillions of dollars, and we're putting trillions of dollars into the economy at a time in which we already see inflated prices, those prices are going to continue to go up. Part of what is also driving that is worker shortage. So we have people who say crucial delivery truck drivers who are delivering goods to stores. Many of those people, but because of vaccine mandates and others, we may lose some of those key necessary parts of the delivery system to deliver goods, which is going to drive up prices. And we also see the supply chain issues where we have ships that cannot get into port because we don't have the port workers and the drivers to unload the ships and move those containers off the port inland to the stores and to the people that need it. And then you throw into the fact you've also got the holiday season, which is going to be a typically busy time. People are going to be buying presents for their family, for their friends. That is also going to impact inflation. So I believe that inflation is going to get worse before it's going to get better. The gas price is something that is especially concerning. When President Trump was in office, we were to the point where we were an energy independent country, that we were actually exporting oil instead of importing. Now, because of decisions by the Biden administration, we have completely changed it in that situation.
How fast things can change in a country. We've seen this in the last year. Just an update as far as the $430,000 per illegal immigrant. The story was that he said it's garbage, it's not going to happen, don't know anything about it. Then all of a sudden, the Justice Department says, well, maybe he's just not checked out. The latest I see this morning on Fox News is that he's now saying, well, okay, it is true, and I'm okay with it. I haven't verified that, but that shows you that this president is not in charge of the Oval Office or anything, not even his own life, to be honest with you. Congressman Michael Guest.
No leadership from our commander-in-chief.
None at all. Thank you, man.